What if the man everyone feared the most was the only one who could protect her? In a world where hatred and vengeance ruled, one secret could decide her fate, and the fate of two nations. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The Arizona Territory, 1879. The small settlement of Bitter Creek had seen its share of violence as tensions between settlers and the Apache tribes continued to simmer across the frontier. Sarah Mitchell stood on the porch of her father's modest ranch house, watching the sunset paint the desert in hues of crimson and gold. At 22, with chestnut hair and determined green eyes, she had grown accustomed to the harsh realities of frontier life. "Sarah, come inside," her father called. James Mitchell was a hard man, weathered by years under the unforgiving sun and the loss of his wife to fever 5 years prior. "Word is, there's been Apache raids just 20 miles south." Sarah sighed, taking one last look at the horizon before stepping inside. The ranch hands were already gathered around the table, their expressions grave. "Jacobson's place was hit yesterday," said Frank, their foreman. "Army's sending more men, but they're stretched thin with the trouble up north." James nodded grimly. "We'll double the night watch. I won't lose this ranch, not after everything we've built." Sarah moved about, serving coffee to the men, her mind elsewhere. Her father had been pushing her to consider Walter Emerson's proposal. The banker's son was safe, secure, and utterly dull. But survival in these territories often trumped matters of the heart. Later that night, Sarah couldn't sleep. The desert winds whispered against the windows as she moved quietly to her father's study. She lit a small lamp and pulled out her mother's journal, seeking comfort in her words. Her mother had taught her to read and write, to value knowledge in a place where many saw little use for an educated woman. A sudden commotion outside jolted her from her thoughts. Shouts erupted, followed by gunfire. Sarah rushed to the window in time to see flames erupting from the barn. "Apache!" The cry rang out, striking terror in her heart. She grabbed her father's shotgun from above the fireplace just as the door burst open. Her father stumbled in, blood soaking his shirt. "Run, Sarah! Hide in the root cellar!" Before she could move, 3 Apache warriors entered behind him. The leader was tall, his face adorned with ochre war paint, his dark eyes scanning the room before fixing on Sarah. She raised the shotgun with trembling hands. "Don't," James pleaded weakly. "They'll kill you." The Apache leader spoke in accented English. "I am Nakohe. Your father killed my brother last moon." His voice was deep, controlled. "A life for a life." "No!" Sarah cried out, stepping between them. "Take me instead." Her father struggled to stand. "Sarah, no!" Nakohe studied her, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded. "The daughter of Mitchell will become Apache. This is good payment." The other warriors looked surprised, exchanging glances. One spoke rapidly in their native tongue, clearly objecting, but Nakohe silenced him with a sharp word. "You will come willingly," Nakohe said to Sarah, "or your father dies now." Sarah looked at her wounded father, then back at the warrior. In his eyes, she caught something unexpected. Not cruelty, but a flicker of something else she couldn't name. "I'll go," she whispered. "If you spare everyone here." Nakohe nodded once. "Gather what you need. We ride before dawn." As the warriors withdrew to secure the ranch, her father grabbed her arm. "Sarah, you can't do this. These savages—" "I have no choice," she interrupted, fighting back tears. "I won't watch you die." As she hastily packed a small bag, Sarah's mind raced. Stories of captives taken by the Apache circulated throughout the territory. Few returned, and those who did were never the same. Yet something about Nakohe's gaze lingered in her thoughts. There was authority there, yes, but not the blind hatred she had expected. When Nakohe returned for her, Sarah stood straight, refusing to show fear. He approached her, studying her with those penetrating eyes. "You have courage," he said simply. "You will need it." As they led her from the ranch, Sarah glanced back one last time at the only home she had ever known, wondering if she would ever see it again. The desert night enveloped them as they rode eastward, toward the mountains where the Apache made their camp. Sarah did not know what awaited her, but she sensed that her life had irrevocably changed. In the silver light of the moon, she caught Nakohe watching her, his expression impossible to read. What did this warrior want from her? And why did she feel that there was more to his actions than simple revenge? The journey to the Apache camp lasted 3 days. They traveled mostly at night, resting in concealed locations during the hottest hours. Sarah observed Nakohe carefully. Unlike the other warriors who regarded her with suspicion or disdain, he treated her with a distant respect, ensuring she had water and making sure the pace wasn't too brutal. On the second night, when they stopped near a small spring, Sarah finally found the courage to speak directly to him. "Why did you take me instead of killing my father?" she asked, her voice low but steady. Nakohe was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said, "Your people believe we think only of blood and death. They do not understand our ways." "And what are your ways?" Sarah challenged. His dark eyes met hers. "Balance, justice, not vengeance." He paused. "Your father killed my brother in a raid, but my brother chose the path of war. I am war chief, but I seek a different path." "What path?" Sarah asked, confusion replacing some of her fear. "One that ends the dying," he replied simply, then walked away, leaving her with more questions than answers. On the third day, they arrived at the Apache camp nestled in a hidden valley. Sarah felt dozens of eyes upon her as Nakohe led her through the settlement of hide-covered wickiups. Women paused in their work, children stared openly, and warriors watched with varying degrees of hostility. An elderly man approached, his face deeply lined with age and wisdom. He spoke rapidly to Nakohe in Apache. Though Sarah couldn't understand the words, the tone was clearly one of disapproval. Nakohe responded calmly but firmly. The exchange continued with occasional glances toward Sarah, until finally the elder made a dismissive gesture and walked away. "Who was that?" Sarah asked. "Taza, our medicine man and my father's advisor. He believes bringing you here will bring misfortune." Nakohe's face betrayed no emotion. "He is wrong." An older woman approached, her manner brusque but not unkind. Nakohe spoke to her and she nodded, gesturing for Sarah to follow. "Go with Nasha. She will show you where you will stay and teach you our ways." "Am I to be your slave?" Sarah asked, lifting her chin defiantly. Something like amusement flickered in his eyes. "No, you are to be my wife." The shock of his words left her speechless, as Nasha led her away to a small wickiup at the edge of the camp. Inside, the older woman provided her with simple Apache clothing, and through gestures and the few words she knew in English, indicated that Sarah should change. That evening, Nasha brought her to the center of the camp where the tribe had gathered around a large fire. Sarah felt intensely conscious of being an outsider, the enemy in their midst. Nakohe sat with other warriors, his status evident in how others deferred to him. A middle-aged man with a heavily scarred face approached Sarah, speaking angrily in Apache and gesturing toward her. Others joined in, voices rising in what was clearly opposition to her presence. Nakohe stood, his voice cutting through the clamor. He spoke at length, his words carrying authority that gradually silenced the dissent. Sarah caught her father's name and recognized the Apache word for peace. When he finished, the scarred warrior spat on the ground near Sarah's feet and stalked away, followed by several others. The rest of the tribe returned to their activities, though many still watched her warily. "What happened?" Sarah asked when Nakohe approached her. "Kichi lost 2 sons to the Bluecoats. He believes all white people should die." Nakohe's expression remained impassive. "Others agree with him. And you don't?" "I have seen too much death," he replied. "The white man's government sends peace talkers with one hand and soldiers with the other. They speak of treaties while taking our land." He looked directly at her. "But I have also seen that not all white eyes think the same. Some can understand." "Understand what?" "That we must find a way to live or we will all die." He paused. "You will help me show this." Over the following days, Sarah began to understand. Nakohe was attempting something dangerous, a gradual shift away from war toward negotiation with the white authorities. As the war chief, he held influence, but many warriors like Kichi opposed any reconciliation. Sarah learned that Nakohe had been educated at a mission school in his youth, explaining his command of English. He had fought the army for years before concluding that the Apache could not win a war of attrition against the ever-increasing numbers of settlers and soldiers. Nasha taught Sarah the basics of Apache life, preparing food, tanning hides, gathering plants. The work was hard but gave structure to her days. Some women avoided her entirely, while others watched her with curiosity rather than hostility. 2 weeks after her arrival, Sarah was collecting water when Kitchi's wife deliberately bumped into her, causing her to spill the water jug. The woman hissed something in Apache. "She says you bring death to our people," translated a young girl named Istas, who had been following Sarah out of curiosity. "She says Nakohe is bewitched by you." Sarah sighed and began refilling the jug. "Is that what everyone thinks?" Istas shrugged. "Some do. Others wait to see what will happen. Nakohe is respected, but many fear change." That night, Sarah confronted Nakohe outside her wickiup. "When do you plan to make me your wife?" she asked bluntly. "Or was that just something you said to pacify your people?" Nakohe's expression, usually so controlled, showed surprise. "It was not a lie." "Then why have you barely spoken to me since we arrived? Why do you let your people treat me as an outcast?" "They must accept you on their own," he said. "I cannot force it." "And you?" Sarah pressed. "Do you actually want me as your wife? Or am I just a symbol in whatever game you're playing with my people and yours?" Nakohe stepped closer, his proximity making her heart race unexpectedly. "It is no game," he said softly. "And yes, I want you as my wife." The intensity in his eyes made Sarah take a step back. "Why me? Because I'm James Mitchell's daughter?" "That is part," he admitted. "But not all. I saw you ready to die for your father. I saw courage, loyalty. These are things I value." He paused. "And I have watched you these past weeks. You learn, you adapt, you do not break." Before Sarah could respond, shouts erupted from the edge of the camp. Nakohe immediately turned toward the commotion, his hand moving to his knife. A young warrior rode in at full gallop, calling out in Apache. The camp instantly mobilized, women gathering children, men reaching for weapons. "What's happening?" Sarah asked, alarmed. "Army patrol," Nakohe replied grimly. "They were tracking our hunting party. Now they approach the camp." Fear gripped Sarah. If fighting broke out, she would be caught between two worlds, trusted by neither. Yet as she watched Nakohe organizing the camp's defense, she realized with startling clarity that she no longer knew where her loyalties truly lay. The camp transformed with practiced efficiency. Warriors took defensive positions while women and children retreated to hiding places in the surrounding hills. Sarah stood frozen, uncertain of her place in this chaos until Nakohe approached her. "You should go with Nasha," he said, his voice tense. "What will happen?" Sarah asked. "We do not know their intentions. They may be searching for you." The realization struck her. She could be rescued, returned to her old life. Yet the thought brought as much apprehension as relief. "Let me speak to them," she said suddenly. "If they're looking for me, I could prevent bloodshed." Nakohe studied her face intently. "You would do this, even though it means you could leave?" "I don't want anyone to die because of me," she answered truthfully. Something shifted in his expression. "Come then." They moved to the edge of the camp where warriors had positioned themselves among the rocks. In the distance, the patrol approached. About 15 soldiers led by a lieutenant. Sarah recognized the young officer as Lieutenant James Cooper, who had visited their ranch several times. "They will see you first," Nakohe instructed. "I will be watching. If they attempt anything beyond talk, we will act." Sarah nodded and stepped forward into the clearing, heart pounding. She raised her arms to show she carried no weapons. "Lieutenant Cooper," she called out. The patrol halted abruptly. Cooper raised his field glasses, then lowered them in evident shock. "Miss Mitchell," he called back. "Stand clear. We'll get you out of there." "No," she shouted. "I'm here to talk. Please, approach alone and unarmed." Cooper hesitated, conferring with his sergeant before dismounting and walking forward slowly. Sarah moved to meet him halfway. "Miss Mitchell, are you all right? Your father has half the territory looking for you." "I'm unharmed," she assured him. "Why are you here?" "We've been tracking a war party that raided the Henderson place. 3 dead." Cooper's eyes darted to the rocks where the Apache warriors were concealed. "Was it these Apache who took you?" Sarah chose her words carefully. "I came willingly to prevent bloodshed at our ranch. The Apache here seek peace, not war." Cooper looked skeptical. "Peace? Miss Mitchell, these people understand only force." "That's not true," Sarah said firmly. The war chief, Nakohe, wants to negotiate. Nakohe? Cooper's expression changed. The butcher of San Carlos? Sarah faltered, realizing there was much about Nakohe's past she didn't know. Lieutenant, she pressed on, if you attack this camp, many will die on both sides. Let me help arrange a meeting between Nakohe and your commanding officer. Cooper studied her face. Miss Mitchell, with all due respect, you've been with these savages for weeks. Your judgment may be compromised. My judgment is perfectly sound, Sarah replied sharply. And if you continue using such language, there will be no chance for peace. After a tense moment, Cooper nodded reluctantly. I'll relay your message to Colonel Barrett, but I'm obligated to inform you that your father is offering a substantial reward for your return. I'm not a prisoner, Sarah insisted. I choose to stay until this matter is resolved. The colonel will be at Fort Grant in 3 days, Cooper said. If your chief wishes to talk, he can come under a flag of truce. We'll guarantee his safety. I'll convey your message. As Cooper returned to his men, Sarah walked back toward the camp, aware of Nakohe emerging from his position. What did he say? Nakohe asked. Sarah explained the lieutenant's offer. Nakohe listened intently, his face revealing nothing. You could have left with them, he observed. Why didn't you? Because nothing would be solved, she answered. The killing would continue. That evening, the tribal council gathered to debate Cooper's proposition. Sarah sat beside Nasha, listening as Nakohe faced significant opposition. Kichi was particularly vehement. It is a trap. They will kill you and attack our camp when our strongest warrior is gone. Others voiced similar concerns, recounting previous betrayals by the white authorities. Taza, the medicine man, warned of spiritual dangers. Finally, Nakohe addressed the council. I have fought the White Eyes for many seasons. I have killed their soldiers and they have killed our brothers. This path leads only to the end of our people. He pointed to Sarah. Mitchell's daughter could have left today. She chose to stay, to help build a bridge between our worlds. Murmurs spread through the gathering. Nakohe continued, I will go to Fort Grant. If they kill me, you will know that peace is impossible, and you must choose a new war chief to lead you in battle. The debate continued late into the night. Eventually, a compromise was reached. Nakohe would go, but accompanied by 3 of his most trusted warriors. Sarah would accompany them as an intermediary. Later, outside her wiki-up, Nakohe approached Sarah. You surprised me today, he said quietly. I surprised myself, she admitted. A month ago, I would never have believed I'd choose to stay in an Apache camp. Why did you? He asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Sarah considered her answer carefully. At first, I was just afraid, then angry. But living here, watching your people, she paused. I've seen how the newspapers and the army talk about the Apache, how they paint you all as bloodthirsty savages. But I've seen families here, children playing, elders teaching. I've seen a people trying to survive. Nakohe moved closer, his voice dropping. And what have you seen in me? Sarah felt her breath catch. A man caught between worlds, trying to save his people even if they don't understand the cost. His hand rose hesitantly, fingertips brushing her cheek in a touch so gentle it almost undid her. Tomorrow we prepare for Fort Grant, he said softly. Tonight I ask again, will you truly be my wife, Sarah Mitchell? The intensity of his gaze made her tremble, not with fear but with something far more complex. In the weeks since her capture, something had shifted fundamentally within her. The man before her was no longer the enemy, the savage of frontier tales. He was simply Nakohe, complicated, principled, and increasingly important to her. Yes, she whispered, but not because I'm your captive, or because it serves some political purpose. Only if you want me for myself. I have wanted you since I first saw you standing defiant in your father's house, he confessed, but I needed you to choose freely. That night, according to Apache tradition, they were married in a simple ceremony witnessed by Nasha and 2 other tribal elders. The ritual was brief but meaningful, their hands bound together with a woven cord as Taza reluctantly blessed their union. As they entered Nakohe's wiki-up together, Sarah felt strangely at peace despite the uncertainty that lay ahead. Tomorrow, they would prepare for a dangerous journey that could determine the fate of Nakohe's people and the future of whatever was growing between them. "Are you afraid?" he asked as they lay side by side in the darkness. "Yes," she answered honestly, "but not of you, not anymore." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "Then we are both afraid of the same thing," he said softly. "The future that awaits us beyond these mountains." Sarah turned toward him, finding his face in the dim light. "Whatever happens at Fort Grant, I won't abandon you." The promise hung between them, fragile yet powerful. As Nakohe drew her closer, Sarah knew that crossing the threshold of his wiki-up had been more than a physical journey. It represented a crossing between worlds from which there could be no return. The journey to Fort Grant took 2 days of cautious travel. Sarah rode beside Nakohe, with the 3 warriors, Hanska, Mato, and Enape, maintaining vigilant watch. They moved primarily at dawn and dusk, avoiding open spaces where they might be spotted by roaming patrols or hostile settlers. During their brief rests, Sarah noticed the subtle changes in Nakohe. Away from the camp, without the constant need to project strength for his people, he spoke more freely. He told her of his childhood, of his time at the mission school where a kind teacher had shown him that not all white people harbored hatred for the Apache. He spoke of his brother's death and the growing realization that the old ways of war could not save his people. "My father was a great war leader," he explained as they sat by a small, carefully shielded fire. "He died believing we could drive the white man from our lands. I believed this too until I saw how many they are, how endlessly they come." "What do you hope to achieve at Fort Grant?" Sarah asked. "Land," he answered simply. "Protected land where my people can live without fear, where our children can grow strong." He looked at her intently. "Will your people allow this?" "Some will oppose it," she admitted, "but others understand that peace benefits everyone." On the morning of the 3rd day, they approached Fort Grant. The adobe walls of the military outpost rose from the desert, like an alien intrusion on the landscape. Sarah felt Nakohe tense beside her. "I have only entered such places as a prisoner before," he confessed quietly. Sarah reached over to touch his arm. "You come as a leader now, seeking peace. I'll be with you." At the agreed meeting point, half a mile from the fort, they were met by Lieutenant Cooper and a small escort. Cooper's eyes widened slightly at the sight of Sarah riding so comfortably alongside Nakohe, but he maintained his professional demeanor. "Miss Mitchell," he nodded. "Chief Nakohe, Colonel Barrett awaits you inside." As they approached the fort gates, Sarah noticed Nakohe subtly surveying the fortifications, the positioning of guards, the number of visible soldiers. The habits of a lifetime of warfare were not easily set aside. Inside the commander's office, Colonel Barrett, a graying, stern-faced man with a reputation for harsh efficiency, studied the Apache delegation with undisguised suspicion. James Mitchell sat beside him, jumping to his feet when Sarah entered. "Sarah!" he exclaimed, moving to embrace her. She returned her father's embrace, feeling the conflicting emotions surge within her. "I'm all right, Father," she assured him. James pulled back, examining her face. "They told me you refused to leave with Cooper's patrol. I couldn't believe it." "It's complicated," she said, "but I'm here now to help both sides understand each other." Colonel Barrett cleared his throat. "Miss Mitchell, while your diplomatic efforts are noted, this meeting is between military authorities and the Apache leadership." "With respect, Colonel," Sarah replied firmly. "I believe I have unique insight into both perspectives." Barrett frowned, but gestured for everyone to be seated. Nakohe and his warriors remained standing until Sarah gently indicated they should sit. What followed was a tense negotiation that stretched over hours. Barrett presented the government's position. The Apache must relocate to the San Carlos Reservation, where they would receive rations and protection in exchange for surrendering their weapons and nomadic lifestyle. Nakohe listened impassively before responding. "San Carlos is death for my people. The water is bad, the hunting poor. Other tribes there are our enemies." He laid out his counterproposal, a smaller territory in their traditional mountain homeland, where they would agree to maintain peace with settlers, but retain their independence. The discussion grew heated at times. Sarah found herself translating not just words but cultural concepts, helping each side understand the other's priorities and fears. During a brief recess, her father pulled her aside. "Sarah, what's happened to you? These people kidnapped you and now you speak for them. I've learned that things aren't as simple as we thought," she explained. "Nakohe wants peace, father. Real, lasting peace." James studied her face. "There's something you're not telling me." Sarah hesitated, then raised her chin. "Nakohe is my husband now." Her father's face paled. "What? By God, Sarah, have they brainwashed you? This savage forced you—" "No," she interrupted firmly. "I chose this. I chose him." James stared at her in disbelief. "You can't mean that. It's not legal, not recognized." "It's recognized by his people," Sarah said, "and by me." The negotiations resumed with new tension in the air. Colonel Barrett, sensing James Mitchell's distress, became more rigid in his positions. Nakohe, perceiving the shift, grew increasingly guarded. At a critical moment when it seemed the talks would collapse entirely, Sarah stood. "Colonel Barrett, father, may I speak freely?" Barrett nodded reluctantly. For generations, both sides have seen only enemies when looking at each other. Both have committed acts of violence, both have suffered losses. She turned to Nakohe. "The Apache way of life is changing, whether we wish it or not. But change doesn't have to mean destruction." She addressed Barrett again. "Colonel, the government's policy of forced relocation has failed repeatedly. It breeds only resentment and resistance. But Nakohe offers a different path, one of coexistence rather than subjugation." The room fell silent as she continued. "I have lived in both worlds now. I am James Mitchell's daughter, raised on stories of Apache raids and frontier defense. But I am also Nakohe's wife, and I have seen the dignity, the courage, and the humanity of his people." Her father made a pained sound, but she pressed on. "What if this small band could become an example? A demonstration that peace is possible when both sides recognize the humanity in each other." Colonel Barrett leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Miss Mitchell, or whatever you call yourself now, your unique situation is hardly a model for territorial policy." "Isn't it?" she challenged. "Two people from opposed worlds, finding common ground? If Nakohe and I can bridge that gap, perhaps our peoples can too." The negotiation continued for 3 more days. Gradually, painfully, a compromise emerged. Nakohe's band would be granted a small territory adjacent to, but separate from, the main reservation. They would maintain peace with settlers and assist the army in controlling hostile bands. In exchange, they would receive some supplies and be permitted to maintain their traditional ways within their territory. The agreement was fragile, imperfect, mistrusted by both sides, but it was a beginning. On the final evening, before they prepared to return to the Apache camp, Sarah sat with her father on the fort's wooden porch. "I still don't understand," James said quietly. "How can you choose this life?" Sarah took his hand. "I didn't expect it either. But I've found something with Nakohe and his people that I never knew I was missing. Purpose, connection to something larger than myself. And him? What kind of man takes an enemy's daughter for a wife?" Sarah smiled gently. "One who sees beyond old hatreds. One who is trying to build something new." She squeezed his hand. "He reminds me of you in some ways. Stubborn, protective, willing to fight for what matters." James looked skeptical but less hostile than before. "Will you ever come home?" "This is a small territory," she replied. "We'll not be far. You could visit, get to know him, get to know the people I've come to care for." "I don't know if I can do that," he admitted. "Try," she urged. "For me." The next morning, as they prepared to depart, Colonel Barrett delivered a final warning to Nakohe. "This arrangement is provisional. One incident, one raid on a settlement, and it ends." Nakohe nodded once. "My word is given. We seek only to live in peace." As they rode away from Fort Grant, Sarah felt the weight of what lay ahead. The agreement would face challenges from both sides: settlers who distrusted any Apache, warriors like Kitchi who viewed negotiation as surrender. "Do you regret your choice?" Nakohe asked quietly as the fort disappeared behind them. Sarah considered the question seriously. She had given up the comfortable certainties of her old life, stepped into a world of profound challenges and prejudices from both sides. Yet riding beside this complex man who carried both the warrior traditions of his people and the vision for a different future, She felt more alive, more purposeful than she ever had before. "No," she answered finally. "I believe in what we're trying to build." Nakohe reached across the space between their horses, his hand finding hers. "Then we will build it together, between our worlds." 3 months later, the small Apache settlement in the foothills was taking shape. Under the terms of the agreement, they maintained their traditional ways while establishing cautious trade relations with nearby settlements. Twice, Nakohe had helped the army track renegade bands that threatened the fragile peace. Sarah had created a small school, teaching Apache children to read and write English, skills they would need in the changing world, while learning their language and traditions in return. Not everyone accepted the new arrangement. Some settlers still viewed all Apache with suspicion. Some tribe members, particularly Kitchi, remained hostile to integration with white society. But slowly, tenuous connections were forming. One autumn evening, as the sun painted the desert gold, a rider approached the settlement. Sarah recognized her father's silhouette against the sunset. Nakohe stood beside her as James Mitchell dismounted awkwardly, carrying a wooden crate. "Father," Sarah called, moving to embrace him. "You came." James nodded stiffly, glancing at Nakohe. "Thought it was time I saw this place for myself." He thrust the crate forward. "Brought some books for your school, and seeds, good vegetables that might grow here." It was a small gesture, uncomfortable and hesitant, but as Sarah accepted the gifts, she saw the effort it represented, a first faltering step toward understanding. That night, as the three of them sat by the fire, the conversation was stilted, full of careful navigation around painful topics. But when Nasha's grandchildren approached, curious about the visitor, James Mitchell's face softened as he showed them a small wooden toy he had carved. Sarah watched her husband and her father, men from worlds that had been at war for generations, finding small moments of common ground through her. The path ahead remained uncertain, the peace fragile, but in that moment, watching the firelight illuminate their faces, Sarah felt the first real hope that the bridge they were building might truly connect their divided worlds. "This," she thought, watching Nakohe's rare smile as her father reluctantly accepted a cup of Apache tiswin, "is what courage looks like. Not on the battlefield, but in the harder work of peace."